Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. Jailed for encouraging terrorism, the Islamic extremists who called for jihad by sword at a Sussex mosque.
Clean up your act. Angry residents and business owners in Ramsgate question Southern Water bosses about repeated coastal pollution.
Also tonight, the battle to stop the South's heritage railways running out of steam amid coal shortages and rising fuel prices.
And a status change for slugs and snails, now officially no longer pests but good for the garden. Good evening. The former trustee of a mosque in Brighton, whose two sons were killed fighting in Syria, has been jailed for 4 years for encouraging terrorism.
Abu Bakr de Gaius from Saltine was filmed addressing a crowd of 50 worshippers, including children, where he said that violent jihad was compulsory.
It happened at the Brighton Mosque and Muslim Community Centre in November 2020. Kit Bradshaw reports.
Convicted of encouraging terrorism and tonight starting a prison sentence. 53-year-old Abu Bakr de Gaius was originally from Libya before settling in Saltine near Brighton. There, his family reported receiving years of racist abuse. 2 of his sons were radicalised and travelled to Syria to fight for an Islamist terror group, where they were killed, something de Gaius spoke to us about at the time.
The grief I have for my son Ja'far and Abdullah cannot be described. My words fail me to describe it.
His third son was murdered in a stabbing in Sussex in 2019, while his brother was held for a time by American authorities in Guantanamo Bay. It was in November 2020 at this mosque that de Gaius gave a speech to worshippers in which he promoted jihad by sword. A video of the incident played at his trial showed him making a stabbing motion as he spoke, and it was the mosque's chairman who reported his concerns to the police.
My concern is the children attending the mosque. Such speeches could have an impact on their mind and their future thinking. Mr. de Gaius he ran the mosque for 20 years. We have installed CCTV all around the mosque that give us a 24/7 picture of what's going inside the mosque.
Prosecutors described de Gaius as an Islamic extremist who believes in the use of violence in the cause of his religion. His unscheduled speech was watched by about 50 people, including children. Sussex police say the case shows they will strive to stop all forms of toxic ideology which have the potential to divide communities and threaten public safety. Kit Bradshaw, ITV News, Brighton.
A jealous nail bar owner who tried to kill his ex-wife by strangling her and stabbing her in the neck was today jailed for 28 years. 53-year-old Thuan Din, seen in this CCTV, attacked Lian Din at their salon in Tunbridge the day after he was handed a restraining order banning contact with her in August 2019. Maidstone Crown Court heard that she fought back and her life was saved by a colleague and 2 passers-by who intervened.
A woman who repeatedly dialed 999 to report fires she'd started herself has been jailed for 28 months. Lewis Crown Court heard that 42-year-old Amy Winter started fires at an address in Surrey Street in Brighton, then became threatening and abusive to police, firefighters and paramedics.
After 6 weeks, the bin strike in Ada and Worthing is over. Members of Unison and the GMB have voted to accept the Joint Council's latest pay offer. Some workers and HGV drivers will see their wages increase with better weekend and bank holiday pay. But the GMB union says it will strike again if the commitments are not met.
Operation Brock will remain in place on the M20 until after the May Day bank holiday at least. The traffic management system uses a movable concrete barrier to queue lorries heading to the Port of Dover and Eurotunnel in Folkestone. The Kent Resilience Forum says it has made the decision because of limited ferry capacity, with P&O's services suspended.
Southern Water has agreed to a public meeting with residents in Ramsgate tonight, angry about repeated sewage releases into the sea.
Save Our Seas Ramsgate is calling for compensation payments for local businesses and improved monitoring from the company.
Sarah Saunders is live for us outside Royal Harbour Academy School, where the meeting is about to start. Sarah, a rare chance for members of the public to talk to Southern Water bosses directly.
Oh, absolutely, and it's one that campaigners here have been pushing for months. They want to speak to Southern Water to express their frustration, but also to try to hold the company to account. On the panel today is top dog Southern Water CEO Ian Macaulay, and he will be expecting some pretty tough questions. One of the people who'll be putting those is with me now, campaigner Gary Saunders. Gary, you've really pressed for this meeting. What do you hope to get out of it?
What we want to see is commitments, proper commitments from Southern Water, particularly Ian Macaulay, about the stakeholder group that they promised us, where community regulators, councillors will monitor their performance in reducing outflows and sewage dumping into the sea. That's what we want. Part of that includes, again, what they've promised us, which is citizen testing kits and also additional buoys that will monitor the seas for various coliforms, things like this, on a regular basis, and that information would be publicly accessible. That's the sort of thing we want.
You want to be allowed to be part of this conversation.
We want to engage with them, yes, and that has been a massive problem. I mean, Macaulay took office in 2017. He's had 5 years, and the problems we've had securing this public meeting, Karen Constantine asked for it originally in October 2021. SOS Ramsgate has followed that through asking, and they've provided us with 6 different dates, 5 different venues. We had an agreement in the 11th of March with a meeting, all sorts of arrangements for this, and they just reneged on the lot. And then they tell us about this meeting with very little notice to organise, to get people along. It's a travesty, and they want to build trust.
Well, no doubt tonight Southern Water will want to share with you and with others that they have made millions of pounds of investment and that they've already committed to reduce sewage outfall. Our cameras won't be allowed in, though, because they want full and frank discussion, and I think we can be pretty sure they're going to get that.
Ramsgate, thank you.
The Prime Minister's facing an inquiry into whether he lied to MPs about PartyGate following a vote today in the Commons. If they decide that he did, he could face suspension from the Commons and more calls to resign. Well, let's go live to our political correspondent, Phil Hornby, who's in Westminster for us this evening. Phil, this story isn't going away for the Prime Minister. How serious is this for Mr Johnson?
Potentially very serious, Matt. This inquiry was Labour's idea. The Tories couldn't oppose it. They just didn't have the numbers, because plenty of Tory MPs want the inquiry too, although they say they want to make sure all the evidence is looked at.
The central issue here is whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament. Would you agree that, in us all accepting that it should be referred to the Privileges Committee, that committee needs to weigh all evidence before coming to a decision, and that includes the Sue Gray report?
Britain's only Green MP says the hullabaloo over PartyGate just shows how antiquated and out of date the system at Westminster is.
Old boys' club rules that simply assume honour are manifestly not adequate, and as a result, a rogue Prime Minister is running rings around us.
Phil, what about the numbers in his own party? How many Tory MPs in the South East want Mr Johnson to go?
Just 2 have said so openly so far, Tim Lawton in Sussex and Sir Roger Gale in Kent, although Sir Roger now says things have changed. This is what he told me on tonight's Last Word programme. Now you're saying it's not the time for him to go.
Well, I've upset a lot of people who are saying Roger Gale's changed his tune. I haven't changed my tune at all, for the record. The Prime Minister's going to have to go before the next general election. The difficulty that we have is that we are in the middle of an international crisis. We can't afford to destabilise the government of the United Kingdom at this moment.
Plenty more on that, and also the government's plans to send migrants to Rwanda. Join me for the Last Word after the late news tonight.
OK, Phil, we look forward to that as ever. For now, thank you very much indeed. Now you're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up on the programme,
a painful legacy of lockdown, millions more cases of backache, some advice from the experts.
And for more on all our stories today, you can of course go to our website, the address itv.com/Meridian, the phone number on the screen, and of course don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and on Instagram.
Sport headline for you now. Brighton couldn't follow up their recent wins at Arsenal and Spurs last night, with Premier League leaders Manchester City proving too strong. The Seagulls had frustrated the reigning champions until the start of the second half, when they succumbed to goals from Mahrez, Foden and Bernardo Silva.
Now, the ITV Evening News, of course, follows us with a look at what's coming up on their programme. Here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up in the programme, guilty of murder, the mother and stepfather who killed their 5-year-old child. Logan Mwangi's body was found dumped in a river near Bridgend last summer. The couple who killed him were convicted today alongside a 14-year-old boy. Also tonight, Boris Johnson is off on a trade mission to India as MPs back home debate opening a parliamentary probe into his PartyGate law-breaking. Plus, gun salutes to mark the Queen's 96th birthday, where the royal fallout continues from Prince Harry's latest interview. We will have more on that and the rest of the news at 6:30.
Thanks, Mary. Now, are you one of 10 million people in the UK who suffer with back pain issues? It costs around £10 billion a year to treat, and apparently the pandemic has made matters worse. Instead of getting up and getting moving, many of us have been sat at our desks working from home.
Well, on the Tonight programme this evening, we'll find out what we can all do to help ease back pain and to try to help prevent it in the first place. With more, here's Amani Khan.
When Tim was in his 20s, he was diagnosed with spondylolisthesis. It's a painful condition where one of the bones in your spine, a vertebra, slips out of position.
It's really debilitating. When it's really bad, I have to have a sort of walking stick, and it takes me like half an hour to turn over in bed. I'm never going to be able to make this completely 100% better. What I can do is acknowledge it that it's there and work as hard as I can to live with it.
And like Tim, many are struggling. Nearly 500,000 workers said they were suffering from a work-related musculoskeletal disorder in 2020 to 2021. An estimated 85,000 reported that this was caused or made worse by the effects of the pandemic.
The preliminary findings at the moment suggest that about 59% of people have reported some form of back discomfort in the last 12 months. When people are working at home, I guess that they're in one location, they don't have to commute to work. Similarly, when people are at work, they're just in one position, they're not having to stand, to walk and go to different meeting rooms.
Posture is often seen as the main issue, but clinician Owen Lewis says it's not always posture causing back pain. It's sometimes a little-known network of tissue throughout the body called fascia.
Instead of stand up straight or sit up straight, be correct, we're saying let's have adaptability. Let's allow you to slump sometimes. And it's the soft tissue, the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments and the fascia that hold this structure in its position. Your back, if it doesn't move for long periods of time perhaps, becomes much less fluid.
Tim says cold water swimming has helped him with his pain management.
The benefits of cold water swimming are huge. It's so cold you don't have any chance to think about anything in your life other than what's going on right now. And any pain that I have is just sort of dissipates because you're just worried about your hands not freezing up.
If you are worried about back pain, you should always consult a medical professional. But for the majority of us with back pain, it could be eased simply by moving. Amani Khan, ITV News.
And you can see more from back pain, Britain's hidden crisis, tonight on ITV from 8:30.
Heritage Railways are battling what's been described as a perfect storm of coal shortages and rising fuel prices, with a warning that services could be cut back.
Well, among them, the Bluebell Railway in Sussex, which is trying to find alternatives without passing the price on to the customer. With more, James Dunham reports.
Sights and sounds of a heritage railway, desperate not to run out of steam.
There's a lot of coal still under the ground that we can't use because of the mining ethics and carbon footprint, obviously. And a lot of people are struggling to find coal, and a lot of people are struggling to find the coal bill, especially the money at the end of the day.
And that poses a real problem.
It does, because it eats into your profits.
Nothing is wasted at the Bluebell Railway, every lump of black rock treated like precious gold dust. The UK's only remaining coal mine isn't producing anymore, and supplies from Russia are stopping. Australia and South Africa among the few alternative sources, fueling an increase in prices. Last year, a tonne of coal cost around £160, not now. So this is traditional steam coal, and the cost of sourcing it, if you can get it, has doubled in the last few months. So the Bluebell Railway is using an alternative fuel, these lumps which are called ovoids. The price though is just as expensive as traditional coal. And for drivers, proving problematic.
It's a high ash content, tends to clog the fire with ash. If they clog up with ash, then you can't get the air up. We've talked of various things that might stop us doing our hobby, like passengers lose interest or the legislation or whatever. But I think no one ever thought it would be because of coal.
We've had to be really flexible, we've had to adapt, we've had to look at all of our services and really prioritise what we're going to run, how we're going to run it. But it's funny because we're already in that mode thanks to 2 years of COVID.
The government say coal mining has been in long-term decline, and with Russian fuel phasing out by the end of this year, there is more than enough time to find other suppliers. The sector, facing the pressure, disagrees.
There is a belief that coal is an old-fashioned technology. It's not. There are still millions, if not billions of tonnes of coal burnt globally. It is reducing, but right now we cannot simply turn it off. In the same ways, you can't simply turn off the supply of petrol to cars while electrical generation comes in. It takes time.
Most heritage railways are supported by the enthusiasm of volunteers, but without long-term reliable fuel sources, their energy won't be enough to keep trains moving. James Dunham, ITV News, Sheffield Park Station.
I'm sure many gardeners would agree there's nothing more frustrating than finding a slug or a snail has nibbled at carefully nurtured young plants.
But now leaf-munching slugs and snails are no longer classed as pests by the Royal Horticultural Society, and a ban on using a type of slug pellet has been introduced.
Instead, the organisation wants the importance of these garden dwellers to be recognised. Amrit Birdie reports.
Slugs and snails have long been some of the most complained about pests in our gardens. But it seems many gardeners will have to change their perspective as new rules around these slimy creatures have come into force. Keen gardener Leonie Wootton is a volunteer at Sandgate Community Garden in Folkestone in Kent.
They're forever chewing everything that you don't want them to chew. You think that you've got something beautiful coming along, and the next day you come outside and everything's been chewed right down to the ground, or it has holes in it, or you might be growing some lovely salad and next thing you know you're eating one of them because they're in it.
From this month, slugs and snails are no longer classified as pests by the Royal Horticultural Society. Instead, the organisation wants to change the narrative.
It is partly because many of them are useful garden creatures, but it's also sort of a change in the narrative and the way we are thinking about the creatures that we share our garden with. And to automatically label all slugs and snails as plant damaging problems is probably not the way we want to go. We need to accept them, they are part of the garden, and then deal with whatever problems they may cause in a slightly different way. Just changing that label changes the story a bit and changes the way we think about them.
And it's not just a change of mindset that's happening. There's a new law to stop the sale of metaldehyde slug pellets from this month. But even without those, there are more things we can do to protect our plants.
A lot of the species, even the ones that eat a lot of dead and rotting material, they will often be attracted to seedlings because they're so kind of soft and juicy. So if you can grow your seedlings as big as possible before you plant them out, they're going to be a bit tougher, a bit less attractive and a bit less likely to just keel over at the slightest amount of damage. And in general, if something's got kind of thicker, waxier leaves or often furry leaves, that's going to be less attractive to them.
Slugs and snails are becoming so popular that people like balcony gardener Jason Williams have been documenting some of their slimy encounters online.
I quite enjoy the fact that I have slugs. It's really, really nice to have
my own little ecosystem. I think one of the best things to do is to grow some plants that are sacrificial and put them around your prized possessions and let the slugs have those. And I think you have to also understand that when you're making a garden, it's not just yours.
If this acceptance of slugs and snails as a vital part of our ecosystem continues, they might soon be welcomed into gardens rather than being banished. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
I'm happy for them to do their thing, but I still don't find them very appealing to look at.
So embrace the slug is basically the message, but it is annoying when they eat your seedlings.
Yeah, see, you're a gardener, I'm not.
I'll try.
Bit of a townie. Holly is with us now. Holly, you're talking about sneezy and sniffly weather.
Yes.
What's that?
Who are they?
Sounds like two of the dwarves, doesn't it? Hay fever. So we're getting into hay fever season. Matt, I know you suffer.
Yep.
Sangy, I think you're all right. I'm a sufferer though. And I've heard lots of people talking about it recently, about how it's getting worse. So I thought we could have a quick chat about that and take a look at what's kind of in the air at the moment that might be affecting people. So take a look at this. So at the moment, if you are being affected, you're probably allergic to tree pollen. As we head through the summer, it's the grasses that come out. That's the most popular. I say popular. That's the most common allergy grass, and then later on we get into weed pollen. So some poor people are affected from sort of March all the way through to September, which must be rubbish. But obviously weather plays a big part in it. So your most pollenorific days will be when it's, I don't think that's a real word, when it's dry, you've got low humidity, you've got a gentle breeze. And then if you have something like rain, that's pretty good for hay fever sufferers because it washes it all out of the atmosphere. But if you get rain and then you get some sunshine, that's bad because it causes a spike. Exactly. So weather plays a big part, but two interesting things I learned about pollen today. The first thing is that you can get what's called a pollen shower. So through the day, pollen, as the air heats the ground, the air rises and it takes pollen up through the atmosphere. But then as that air cools in the evening and overnight, it sinks back down. So many people find that when you might think hay fever wouldn't be as bad in the evening and overnight, it actually gets that bit worse. And my other top pollen fact is that spiderlings, so baby spiders, eat pollen, but in theory their mouths are so small, scientists don't know how they're able to do it. So if you are arachnophobic and also have hay fever, you might want to reconsider your loyalties.
Right, well, that's me then. That's both of those things.
What about slugs?
I thought I did.
Right, let's find out how pollenorific the forecast is going to be with the details. Here's Holly.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Well, today may have been bright skies aplenty, but I'm afraid we have got changes afoot. More cloud in general for the coming days, so still some bright or sunny spells. Breezier as well. I know we've had a bit of a breeze today, but that does tend to strengthen. And some rain at times, not a huge amount, but some showers, say tomorrow, perhaps Saturday, maybe a bit of showery rain on Saturday night, although some uncertainty about the rainfall detail for the weekend. So more of a breeze picking up. You can see more of a squeeze here in the isobars, that easterly increasing. This is the low down to the south. As I say, we're just keeping a watch on, but will affect the rainfall detail come the weekend. Out there at the moment then, it's a dry look to things. We have got this breeze, this northeasterly, and it does start to draw more cloud our way as we head into the early hours. Some of that a bit on the low side. Temperatures stay a bit higher generally than we saw last night. These are typical values, but I think getting that bit lower on the thermometers where you are in more rural spots. So for tomorrow, quite a different look to things. More cloud feeds in and it's thick enough just to generate some showers, perhaps more so the further west you are across the region. Still some sunny spells coming through, but a brisker wind around for tomorrow. I think gusts into coastal areas in particular getting up to, say, 35 miles an hour or so, maybe a bit more than that. And temperatures are that bit lower as well. And that breeze is going to be a theme that continues into the coming days. Showers around at times and temperatures lower than we've seen of late.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
And in just a moment, the ITV Evening News continues here with Mary Nightingale.
Sangeeta's back with the late updates around 10:30. For now, though, from the team, thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.